No man has a right to own mountains. Chapter 6. Thanks, ma'am. It's no use thanking me. It's Grandad's daft idea. Don't be like that, ma'am. You're going to love it. Just wait till you meet Titch and Ralph. I must admit he sounded very nice on the phone. You spoke to Titch? No, Ralph, you daft apeth. Rosie grinned. They were sat on the upper deck of the bus, stuck in the traffic on the A6 between Disley and New Mills. The date was Friday the 3rd of November, 1989. It was now gone 5 o'clock, and the sun had set a good half hour before. We might have been better leaving it until tomorrow, Rosie. We're not going to see anything tonight. But we'll be able to get up and be out as soon as it's light, ma'am. We'll have 2 full days to enjoy ourselves. Will you take me to Edale Cross? Yes, of course, but why there in particular? Grandad told me that's where he first met Grandma. That's right, and guess what, Rosie? What, ma'am? She'd tripped when she was running and sprained her ankle. You mean it runs in the family? Hopefully not. I haven't done it yet. What was she like? Oh, Rosie, Mum was so beautiful. She was a lovely, kind, gentle, unflappable, patient woman. Mind you, she had to be having to cope with Dad. Your Grandad's always been the same, up to some kind of mischief or other, although there's not a bit of harm in him. They were both wonderful parents. Me and your Uncle Billy couldn't have wished for better. Did you spend much time in Hayfield? Little Hayfield, with Mum's mother. She were another wonderful person, though her husband was a different kettle of fish. Edale as well. In fact, we walked for miles all around the area. Mantor, Castleton, Winnett's Pass, Ladybower, Bleaklow. You name it, we tramped over it. Why didn't Grandad move to Little Hayfield when they got married? It's far nicer in the country. I suppose it was his job, Rosie. Grandma was a cotton spinner at a mill in New Mills, but she was laid off in the Depression. Grandad was an apprentice toolmaker in Higher Openshaw when he first met her, and was lucky to escape the dole. Toolmakers are the highest skilled manual workers in the engineering industry. He's been very lucky. He's never been out of work in all his life. It was natural for your Grandma to go and live with him when they married. There was no work for toolmakers where she lived. I wish I'd been able to meet Grandma, but I love Grandad. He is very special, isn't he, Rosie? He was brilliant when I was a child, and he's been my rock in the last few years. She looked out of the window, peering into the gloom, as if trying to work out where they were. Do you know something, Rosie? He would never, under any circumstances, work overtime, although he would have been paid a lot extra if he had. He was often asked to do so. In fact, he was threatened with a sack more than once for refusing to do so. But he stuck to his guns and wouldn't do it. Why not? Because he said every hour at work was one less hour with Mum, me and Billy, and every hour of overtime work kept somebody else out of work. He said that was wrong and he wouldn't have any part of it. He'd seen too many workers suffer in the 30s, and he'd seen the look of hopelessness in all too many men's eyes when they were made redundant and told they had no future. Skilled, hard-working family men thrown on the scrap heap and an uncertain future. One of his mates took his own life because of it, and that affected your Grandad badly. That's one of the reasons why we had such a wonderful childhood. Dad took us walking and camping at every opportunity he could. He didn't just want to spend time with us. He wanted us to run wild and learn about the world we lived in, and not mope around the house or be stuck in a dirty town. That's why I'm really pleased he started taking you walking. Rosie smiled. Her mother sounded quite enthusiastic. I'm glad you think kids should spend as much time in the country as possible, ma'am. I'm really looking forward to running wild. All those weekends and bank holidays to come. not to mention school holidays. You might have to stand in for Grandad for weeks, months even. You never know, it might be ages before he can walk properly. The doctor said old people take longer to heal, and Grandad mustn't rush the healing process, didn't he?" Alice looked into her daughter's eyes, a look of something like consternation on her own face. "Rosie, come on, ma'am, we're almost there. Ralph will be waiting. Don't forget your backpack." She grabbed her own rucksack and was already heading for the stairs before her mother had a chance to respond. Rosie was the first off the bus, and Alice wasn't too far behind. As promised, Ralph was waiting for them, and he had Titch with him. After the initial introductions, they began to make their way through the dark, narrow streets, lights shining dully through curtains, their boots echoing on the cobbles. Somewhere a dog barked. Titch's head went up, ears erect and alert, but he remained silent. Ralph informed them that his mother had prepared a room for Alice as well as Rosie. "But Dad's arranged for me to stay at the Sportsman." "That was before me mother decided to sort the other room out. Didn't Mr. O'Donnell tell you?" Alice frowned. "No, he didn't." Rosie smiled her quiet smile. "Well, I spoke to him at lunchtime, and he said he'd cancel the booking. You see, Mother wants to prove to Feyther she can make a go of providing bed and breakfast for tourists. You and Rosie are a kind of experiment, although Feyther don't know it." "Well, it's very kind of your mother, but if she's conducting an experiment, we'd better pay. She can have the money I was going to pay the Sportsman." "No, you won't. Mother won't accept it." "In that case, I'll stay at the pub. If your mother's going to make a go at bed and breakfast, she's going to have to charge, and she might as well start straight away. That's the only way she'll conduct a successful experiment. My mother can be very strong-willed. I don't think she'll accept." "My mum's very stubborn too," Rosie informed him. "I think we are in for an interesting weekend. What do you think, Titch?" Titch wagged his tail vigorously. They started up the Kinder Road, eventually reaching the Sportsman. Ralph rooted in his pockets, left hand first, and handed a torch to Alice, whilst he delved into his right-hand pocket. "You'll need that, Mrs. O'Donnell, and I've got one for you, Rosie. There's no lights where we're heading, and there's too much cloud for the moon to be of much use." "Thanks, Ralph, but O'Donnell's my maiden name. Both Rosie and me are called Ackroyd." "I'm sorry, I never thought." "Why should you? It's a natural mistake." "How far is the farm, Ralph?" "Not far, Rosie. Once we pass the campsite, Edale Road goes off to the right. The farm's just through Colwell Clough." "That's the beginning of the old pack-horse route to Edale, isn't it?" Alice asked. "Yes, do you know it?" "I certainly do. I've walked it to Edale many a time." "You're lucky, Rosie. It's the way to Edale Cross. I'll take you tomorrow, and if you can walk that far, we'll go to the Nag's Head in Edale itself for something to eat." She turned to Ralph. "Do they still have the children's bar at the back of the pub?" "Yes, and the old-fashioned penny slot machines. I used to love them when I were a kid." "Oh, my Rosie, it's all coming back to me. What fun we had when we used to come up here. Wait till you see Jacob's Ladder and Mam Tor, and oh, there's such a lot to see and explore. You're going to love it." Rosie smiled quietly to herself, but didn't say a word. She didn't have to. All was going to plan, precisely as she told Grandad it would do. The only problem being that he wasn't there to enjoy it.